Nintendo is host to an abundance of intellectual properties, some of which are the most iconic and profitable in the entire industry. And with all these franchises at their disposal, the Big N isn't above combining their multitude of universes for some of that sweet fan service, the apex of this concept being SuperSmashBros. Outside of the blockbuster slobberknocker, I've observed the majority of Nintendo crossovers to habitually take the form of cameo appearances and Easter eggs, and every now and then they go that extra mile, like with Mario Kart 8. However, I've always felt that this company has been sitting on a mountain of opportunities for their franchises to coexist in some form of fashion, and I've got 10 ideas in mind that I would love to see get the green light. So join me everyone, as it's time to inform Mr. Miyamoto that there's an entire galaxy of money to be made through these alliances, as I count down my top 10 Nintendo crossovers I would love to see. But before we begin, more than 50% of you watching aren't subscribed, so I'd very much appreciate it if you click that like and subscribe button, and also follow me on both Twitch and Patreon. Before we proceed, I must be clear that these pair-ups are only concerning the IPs that Nintendo owns. Therefore, nothing of a third-party nature will be present. So if you're wondering as to whether or not the likes of Sonic, Final Fantasy, Resident Evil and Monster Hunter will be featured, well, sorry to burst your bubble, but that is not happening, as much as I would kill for a Pokemon game in the style of Monster Hunter. On top of that, the crossovers that I have in mind are a mix of either franchise mashups in relation to a certain genre of video game, or alternatively focused on additional Nintendo properties appearing within a specific title, similar to how Mario Kart 8 featured courses from F-Zero, Animal Crossing, and Zelda. Now this video is purely my opinion, and if you've got any suggestions for additional Nintendo hookups, please let me know in the comments. I think it would be great to get a discussion going, because the sky really is the limit, and God knows Nintendo's not above making the stupidest idea turn a profit. And with all that cleared up, it's time to reflect on the Big N's past and combine their established works to pave the way for a very bright future for both the company's fans and their shareholders. And considering that the likes of SmashBros repeatedly broke the internet, here's hoping these prospects can cause history to repeat itself. Nintendo Kart. I'm gonna be real with y'all. As exciting as this idea sounds, and personally speaking, I'd rank it higher based on how much I would love for it to happen, there's a good chance Nintendo Kart will become a reality, given what Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has achieved. Thus, this is likely to be the next logical step for the franchise, hence why it's only at number 10. Nevertheless, given how well the likes of Splatoon, Zelda and F-Zero translated onto the racetrack, the prospect of having Nintendo's entire directory burning rubber through the Mushroom Kingdom and beyond is enough to make this cash cow flood the stock market, and will be the perfect launch or early release title for whenever we get a Switch 2. It's either that or Metroid Prime 4, and honestly, my money's on the former. The notion of Nintendo Kart isn't to make a completely new game, but rather be a transition for the Mario Kart series to now feature all or most of Nintendo's IPs, similar to Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, only Mario doesn't have to be shoved in the player's face since Nintendo's other franchises actually get love and attention. Some of them. Naturally, I would prefer the gameplay to remain otherwise identical to Mario Kart 8, with maybe some tweaks here and there to the physics, though I doubt snaking or having two drivers is coming back anytime soon. Any major changes would be in relation to the roster, courses, and items, now being comprised of characters, objects, and locations from an assortment of Nintendo's worlds. If we are to assume that the character selection will be once again comprised of 48 participants, I firmly believe that the Mushroom Kingdom residents should get the precedence, given that, well, it's a Mario. In this case, perhaps a whole row of 8, with the rest of the selection being comprised of either franchise mascots, iconic faces, or those of a cuter nature to better blend in with the overall aesthetic, with at least one representative per property. Now I imagine the more popular ones will take up a larger portion of the ensemble, so once again, Captain Falcon is flying solo. Yes! While the argument can be made that the likes of Fire Emblem and Xenoblade don't reflect the more cartoony style of Mario Kart and Nintendo as a whole, there's plenty of cute and cuddly characters from both series to use as reps, plus the likes of Link prove that more realistic entities can work fine in this art style. Though for the love of all that is sacred, if Mythra is going to be playable, this game better make sure she's wearing the black leggings, otherwise Nintendo's gonna piss off a lot of parents every time she jumps off a ramp. vehicle options speak for themselves, and I think it would be hilarious to see certain Pokemon and other creatures be used as the basis for all sorts of bikes and carts. But the courses are where the real magic lies, and should, in my opinion, be based on key locations from each universe, with the course design or background elements changing upon each lap for certain tracks. Hyrule Castle and Mute City are already excellent examples, but let's push the envelope even further and have players drive through one of the Pikmin planets that change from underground to overground a la Pikmin 2. Perhaps we can explore the depths of Brinstar and be privy to the various creatures occupying the surroundings, while Metroids evolve into new forms with each lap. Why not have players race through the Kanto region while Pokemon of all different types occupy the sky, sea, and forest to really add that sense of whimsy? Imagine the spectacle of leaving racers in the dust while speeding across the titans of the Cloud Sea as the fog alternates to reveal different passages and shortcuts. These scenarios excite me immensely, but if the devs wish to change things up and give the game more of an identity outside of just being Mario Kart with Nintendo characters, then perhaps adding universe-specific items like Bomb Chews, Rock Pikmin, or DK Barrels, plus new battle modes like Hot Potato, only it's with a Metroid, could be neat. In fact, why not bring back Mission Mode from Mario Kart DS and tailor it to feature bosses and challenges that act as callbacks to specific games? Not to mention any new Nintendo games that come out after its release can be added as either free downloads or DLC so that the milk will never curdle. I have no doubt the Nintendo card is going to happen sooner or later, and given the humongous success of both Mario Kart and Smash Bros, this idea would make just about everybody happy. Though unfortunately, I don't think Nintendo will do anything too drastic regarding new ideas and alterations. Not to mention, where the hell is Mario Kart meant to go from here? Unless Mario Kart 9 brings back literally every single course and character, I don't think we're too far off from seeing Pikachu drive a BMW. Nintendo Odyssey Worlds. While I'm rather privy to the phrase better late than never, this particular pitch would have been far more relevant 6 years ago, and may seem highly redundant unless Nintendo makes a Mario Odyssey 2. But considering Mario Kart 8 Deluxe didn't get bonus content until years later, nothing is impossible, and I'm certainly not against the idea of adding more to what is easily my favourite Mario game to date. Sorry Galaxy, but even with that incredible orchestra of yours, nothing beats Jump Up Superstar. For those unaware, the goal of Super Mario Odyssey is to travel to various worlds, explore them and collect moons via different platforming challenges and minigames specific to each location. Now the game is already bursting with dense and highly imaginative levels and tons of moons to collect, too many in the context of the post-game, but I would love it if either as DLC or part of a sequel, new areas dedicated to different Nintendo franchises were playable. Before we get ahead of ourselves, I must stress that these stages should be about the same size as the Mario 64 callback stage, so as to not overstay their welcome or be a mandatory escapade, given that completing Odyssey for both normal and 100% runs can be rather taxing. As for the worlds themselves, I feel the planets should be based on signature locations/landmarks from each universe, accompanied by challenges that take advantage of said world's design and architecture, either for original platforming scenarios or as callbacks to certain events in specific games. Take, for example, having to explore Hyrule Castle and using the Cappy ability to possess one of the dogs and take it back to its owner, just like in Ocarina of Time, or perhaps a world based on Onett from Earthbound. Heck, we could go so far as to do Dinosaur Planet from StarFox Adventures and take control of the indigenous life. There really is a fountain of creativity to be had with this concept, plus thanks to how Mario Odyssey is designed, the stages would likely be easy enough for casual players to enjoy and have fun, while the avid Nintendo fans would get a real kick out of doing the harder missions which harken back to the IP's origins. Of course, one cannot forget the main gimmick of Mario Odyssey, that being the ability to possess enemies and other NPCs, as it would be a dream come true to take control of various entities across Nintendo's entire catalogue of creations, and make for very fun and creative ways of exploring/tackling the various stages, not to mention big boss fights too. Picture, if you will, being able to step into the proverbial shoes of all sorts of Pokemon, Iron Knuckles, Space Pirates, Monarchies and so on, alongside facing off against the likes of Metal Face, Rayquaza, Andross and King K. Rool. It really is the little things in life. Adding to that, unlocking costumes related to numerous Nintendo characters would make for a very fun bonus, as it would be hilarious but also adorable to see Mario running around in Pokemon trainer attire or dressed like Pit. Hell, I think he'd look right at home with Rex's getup. I must admit that as things stand, this proposal doesn't hold much water and would likely only happen were Nintendo to make a sequel, though I believe wholeheartedly that were this concept to become a reality, it would add so much more to what would likely be a very meaty and ambitious adventure, and were it to take the form of DLC, it should do a good job of keeping fans happy if they're going to have us wait another decade or so for a new 3D Mario game. In retrospect, the long intervals between each 3D Mario adventure does seem rather outrageous, but given the extent in which Nintendo has let other franchises dwindle before finally deciding to make a new game, if at all, you get used to it. FireEmblemEngage Nintendo Rings. Anyone who's familiar with this channel knows how much I adore Fire Emblem, so it's no surprise that I would love to witness this series merge with Nintendo's extensive registry, and while Engage isn't my favourite entry, it's currently the most recent and relevant, not to mention the game's main gimmick, that being the emblem rings, would make for a brilliant catalyst to allow an assortment of Nintendo characters to join the fray and make for some incredible bonus material. Either that, or just bring the mechanic to a new Fire Emblem title and let the crossover commence. Especially because Engage kind of shot itself in the foot in regards to DLC and its own representation. As well, personally, I can live with the lack of Seliph or Alincia's actual emblem rings. Are you seriously telling me that Azura, Eliwood, and Arm weren't a priority? That makes about as much sense as a Marvel vs. Capcom game without the X-Men. I hate everything. Fire Emblem Engage celebrates 30 years of the franchise's history in the form of emblem rings, artifacts that summon heroes from their respective games to be used as power-ups with unique weapons and abilities. This mechanic worked on various levels as it made for some fun callbacks to past titles through character interactions, while manifesting extremely potent abilities that could really send the enemy packing, as well as maps based on pivotal moments within said emblem saga. The simple notion of having fan-favourite Nintendo faces acting like enhancements would be incredibly charming and feel like something akin to Persona, with the emblem rings in question focusing on the main characters or those which are very popular and or suit being within the Fire Emblem universe. After all, while I'm not against the idea of Pikachu being an emblem ring, the likes of Mewtwo and Lucario would be more contextually appropriate. This pitch also presents a great opportunity regarding how each Nintendo ring can grant units special weapons and skills that can make them very strong, though I stand by said rings being optional endgame or new game plus content via amiibo or some sort of DLC, because Diamant plus the Aegis equals death! In addition to items and abilities, bond conversations where the characters comment on the world at large or having specific dialogue with certain units could make for some very deep interactions or fun kinds of meta humor. I can easily picture Princess Zelda and Celine getting along very well. Kirby and Chloe can relate to the other's love of food. The Mario and Brodia brothers could have some really deep chats which would tug at the heartstrings. Little Mac could relate to and really inspire Alfred. Imagine Samus seeing bits of the baby Metroid in Vale and all the feels that come with it. And for shits and giggles, I'd love for Yunaka to bond with Pikachu. Would give new meaning to the phrase Zappy. Finally, there's the parallels that accompany each emblem, with the maps being inspired by key scenes and battles from that respective universe. Not to mention the enemies and bosses act as an additional callback, though given what occurs within Engage, they'll likely use the default enemy units as placeholders, such as a corrupted Wyvern representing Ridley, Axe General for King K. Rool, and a Swordmaster for Jin, because making unique assets for each ring is a bit much, and I doubt Intelligent Systems is at the top of Nintendo's funding list. I'll admit that there's a substantial amount of bias with this entry given my adoration for Fire Emblem, but I do believe that the idea pertains to significant merit, and even if Engage does not host this collab, the idea is more than applicable to future entries, plus it would be the best way to get non-FE players interested in the franchise, and that's a win for everyone. Nintendo Snap. One of the series' earlier spin-off titles, Pokemon Snap, despite its questionable premise, quickly became one of the most beloved Nintendo 64 games and has remained a favourite in the eyes of Pokemon fans, so much so that it even got a sequel back in 2021, and that game seemed to be pretty good. Was it any good? Tell me honestly. Clearly, taking snapshots and selfies of Pocket Monsters is something people can get down with, so why not apply the same concept to every one of Nintendo's creations? Or at least the ones they give a shit about, because I doubt Little Mac's going to be on the front of a magazine anytime soon. Similar to my suggestion for Nintendo Kart, simply take the basic idea of Pokemon Snap, but expand the setting to include various ecosystems and inhabitants based on different Nintendo universes. Just like always, the goal shall be to take the best photographs of characters and the environments they occupy, focusing on finding the most standout or obscure entities and capturing their likeness in the most stimulating way possible, as well as interacting with the surroundings in order to trigger unique scenes and unlock new passages to traverse more of the track. If you played Pokemon Snap both old and new, then you get the basic gist. But for those of you unfamiliar with these titles, while it may sound like a mundane experience, the fun factor comes from all the visual flair and personality bouncing off the surroundings. And given that this is Nintendo we're talking about, there's a lot to work with. From the offset, I wager that this game is likely to captivate players through its charm and vibrancy, while acting as a neat way to get the younger generation more familiar with Nintendo's long library of titles, while avid fans will get oodles of enjoyment from photographing their favourite characters from the ideal angles and additionally recognizing secrets and branching paths for those who are familiar with the corresponding games to simultaneously add replay value and act as a large source of fan service. Take for example, in the original Pokemon Snap, you would cause an Electro to explode and it opened a secret tunnel, or you knocked Charmeleon into lava and it evolved into Charizard. The same idea is prevalent here, only now with the benefit of being able to incorporate specific gimmicks in each stage for that additional variety, while complementing the existing series, including but not limited to the ability to shoot missiles in order to reveal hidden passages in a Metroid stage, or destroy X-Parasites that later mutate into rarer forms. Perhaps the player can complete microgames in a WarioWare level, and by doing so, more faces show up for better photos. Why not try to activate question mark blocks and give the Mario Bros power-ups to help them reach new areas and force unique enemies to come out of the woodwork for your album? Adding to this sense of immersion, stages can correspondingly recreate key moments from a vast selection of games, and capturing the right snapshots could grant the player very high points akin to a Hall of Fame challenge. In fact, if we go back to that Charizard example, what if the player must trigger something to cause Pyra to become Mythra so as to save Rex from Malos? Perhaps something must be done to call the four giants to stop the moon from falling on Termina, or using the Sylph Scope to identify the ghost Marowak. Perhaps finding a way to ensure that Fox flies through the alcoves and heads behind the waterfall in Corneria. You get the idea. Pair this with a list of achievements and some sort of social media aspect, which encourages users to share their best picks online, as well as help out those who overlook certain details within a level, and this could add a real sense of community akin to how the original Pokemon Snap functioned, minus going to Blockbuster and suddenly I'm dead inside. As charming of a game as this may be, I get the feeling it won't be the easiest to sell to general audiences, since until people actually played the N64 classic, Pokemon Snap looked like it was dead on arrival. Though Nintendo's long-standing fanbase is very vast, so profit margins shouldn't be a problem. As I mentioned, they made bank with dumber ideas. So I believe this game could be the simple yet easy fun that Nintendo excels in, and acts as a very nice celebration of their entire history. Furthermore, having this franchise Safari function as a gateway for a newer generation to be introduced to the big ends and lesser known titles would be a brilliant ploy to give their not so popular IPs more of a boost, which I'm sure Pit would appreciate. Though I must say, while the idea of people sharing their picks is great, I won't deny that there's a sick part of me that wants to see just how risque and in poor taste people can be, because I would kill to see Miyamoto react like this a second time. Luigi's Nintendo Mansion. Mario's partner in crime has certainly made a name for himself ever since he got to star in the GameCube's launch title, going on to have 2 sequels and even an entire year dedicated to him. Now that the second Mario brother and his spooky series is still going strong, why not let the man play host to a bunch of mansions all based on different Nintendo franchises, celebrating the silly yet darker side of the company and making for so many creative areas to explore and enemies to do battle with, though I doubt Luigi will be on board with this undertaking. The poor dude straight up died when he ran into the Grim Reaper. I'd hate to see what will happen to him were he to encounter the SAX. The Luigi's Mansion series has the titular character explore one or more vast infrastructures while being hounded by ghosts of all shapes and sizes, all the while solving puzzles and fighting bosses so as to clear out the place and get stinking rich in the process. Honestly, I'm surprised Wario hasn't gotten in on this shtick. While I would never make extra Nintendo-themed mansions mandatory, I do feel that having them be unlockable and/or bonus levels for Luigi to explore would be great fun, paying particular attention to the dark/spooky aspects each institute represents. Now don't get me wrong, this is hardly going to become Resident Evil, as much as I'd love to see the Black Knight function as the proverbial Mr. X. but it would be refreshing to battle enemies and bosses from Nintendo's bestiary, as well as traverse mansions that are constructed similar to the more creepy locations, ranging from having to suck up ghost-type Pokemon and pose from Zelda, to exploring the space station from Metroid Fusion, or the interior of Hades' heart from Kid Icarus. Heck, Lavender Town alone would suffice, and Fave's Labyrinth would be the ultimate test of endurance. If you know, you know. Speaking of which, perhaps it would be neat for Luigi to encounter characters related to each stage who could make funny remarks about him or the situation in a very meta sense, like Red asking about the ghost hand on Luigi's shoulder, or running into Wrinkly Kong, which would no doubt get a chuckle out of those who are in on the joke. Since there's so many properties to select, I feel that the mansion should be relatively short in length, but reward those with franchise foresight to better navigate through the building and solve puzzles unique to each one, along with getting power-ups and abilities that could be utilized in some sort of New Game Plus mode, like a scan visor from Metroid or some sort of Splatoon gun to alter the playing field. If the establishments are going to be designed with a prerequisite of players being at least somewhat familiar with the selected IP, I'd wager that the difficulty should be harder than the standard playthrough, and very much meant for those who have completed the game and wish to try something more challenging. That being said, I remain adamant that these edifices should be present in a fourth Luigi's Mansion, since the third game is a little old at the time of this recording, and unlike Mario, Luigi's never gonna have that sort of staying power. Mamma mia! This kind of crossover is certainly more niche than the preceding entries, since it's already tied to what is essentially a Mario spin-off, and even then, only features specific elements from the corresponding titles. But the amount of frightful fun to be had with such an idea is so tantalizing. Plus, I'd love for the big end to embrace its more sadistic side and celebrate all the dark material the company has outputted. Well, some of the dark material. After all, I highly doubt Luigi would be able to process the shit that goes down in Mother 3, Majora's Mask, Sacred Stones, Metroid Fusion.
6 hours later.
Another Code, Kirby's Dream Land 2, and Pokemon Generation 4. At what point did this company stop being kid-friendly? MarioParty Nintendo boards. The MarioParty series has seen quite the resurgence thanks to the two Switch titles, even if Superstars, for as great as that game may be, is begging for DLC! With the iron still hot, it only makes sense for Nintendo to up the ante when it comes to their classic friendship killer, and I believe the next logical step is to let the residents of other kingdoms get in on the mayhem and madness, though given how hostile the Mario inhabitants can get, I don't want to be around when Nia's star is stolen. This proposal isn't too dissimilar to my pitch for NintendoKart, though in this particular instance, I still feel the core game should be a Mario Party title, since unlike Mario Kart, the series has, to my knowledge, not yet integrated additional Nintendo properties. And even then, the content I feel regarding the other IPs should be restricted to bonus modes rather than completely overhauling the series' identity. In fact, for a nice double entendre, you could call the game Mario Party All-Stars, because All-Star and Nintendo go together like bread and butter. The Nintendo-specific content that I feel would best suit this game would typically be different boards based on settings from other franchises to be played on, with an assortment of hazards and obstacles unique to each one, along with perhaps exclusive rule sets to shake things up, similar to the likes of Koopa Tycoon from Mario Party 8 or the day and night cycle in Mario Party 6. Picture, if you will, a Zelda board where you can travel between the light and dark world or get attacked by a horde of chickens. Perhaps we can enjoy playing through a Pikmin board, where if any player isn't within a specific zone when night falls, they get swamped by the ball borbs and lose items, coins, or stars. Running parallel with the new locations, new minigames can be played with more extreme stipulations and objectives that are designed in relation to the franchise each challenge is tied to. Take, for example, getting the correct type matchups in a Pokemon minigame, or instead a racing minigame that works off F-Zero logic with a boost in energy system. There could be a Punch-Out style duel minigame, and we could even get the chance to fly an R-Wing and see who can amass the most points before we inevitably shoot down Slippy. A mode of this caliber I theorize to keep Mario Party feeling fresh and really push players to their limits. Plus, while additional characters aren't necessary, they would be nice to take control of, or at the very least allow them to act as board hosts, plus having a surplus of residents to pop up enough of bonuses or penalties on event spaces, cause God knows the Nopon will rob you blind. Since I feel this type of content would work best in an optional format, perhaps the method of procurement could be achieved via some sort of in-game escapade concerning single-player or multiplayer. But knowing Nintendo, it's likely to be locked behind DLC or amiibos. But hey, if the boards are good, I'll happily fork over the money. It's not like I get the chance to do so in Superstars.
Shut up and take my money!
After that brief dark period Mario Party went through, it's great to see the series finally get back on its feet. and if Nintendo wants this cash cow to make it rain, then inviting the rest of their residents to the party is a surefire way to rake in the dough, and further the bonds of friendship between players as they gather around for wholesome Nintendo fun. Only for all that chivalry to go out the window, not long after Pikachu steals Marth's star. Man, that Smash 64 trailer was onto something. Punch-Out Nintendo Super Bosses. While this series is scarce in regards to the titles under its belt, the Punch-Out games are classics across multiple systems and some of the best games on their respective consoles. Therefore, not only would bringing Little Mac out of retirement for the Switch be a real treat, but going that one step further and having the underdog face off against opponents that hail from all across the Nintendoverse would make for showdown so crazy and intense it would be easy to confuse the game with an episode of JoJo. Funny enough, this little idea of mine has technically already been executed in Punch-Out for the Wii, as Donkey Kong was a secret boss in Last Stand mode, and while a very hard fight, it was a delight to face off against the Big Ape in a format where Little Mac wasn't at a catastrophic disadvantage. Now, if one were to take the same idea but have the selection expand to all sorts of IPs, bringing with them bulky and or boxing related fighters, then you've got a recipe for success that would suffice as additional content and superb fan service. Plus, there's no shortage of folks to pit Little Mac against, such as Machamp, Hitmonchan, and God knows how many other fighting types, Karade, King Dedede, Rhine, Darunia, Balthus, Rinka, Wario, General Scales, Mr. EAD, you get the idea. Fuck it, let's go the whole 9 yards and have Little Mac square up against Drago from Ring Fit Adventure. That's sure to work up a sweat. Just like with the Big Ape, I feel these fights should be separate to the main game, and either be something to unlock or the more likely option of DLC or amiibos, because that's how Nintendo likes to roll. Furthermore, these battles should be hard, forcing the player to really bring their A game and focus on fighting around the gimmicks unique to each boss, such as Karade shooting spikes out of his belly that you must dodge while aiming for his face when his mouth is open, or making sure that you don't hit Wario during certain intervals and taunts, otherwise he'll blow out his backside and that'll kill you faster than any sort of head trauma. These events would make for some very fun post-game battles, and be a wonderful way to pay respects to the big guns of Nintendo's ensemble. And for that additional incentive, these foreigners should offer Little Mac bonuses for besting them, ranging from improving his stats to unlocking abilities that are tied to each character. Either that or specific costumes and equipment, because who wouldn't want to slug Glassjaw with a Falcon Punch, or pummel King Hippo with the King of Crapling's Heroes Relic? These additional features could make the base game much easier and allow players to beat their record or perform stupidly over the top feats against regular boxers as a fun kind of New Game Plus stipulation, or for the purposes of speedrunning. And heck, the prospect of facing different Little Macs online, each of which have unique attributes from the super bosses they bested, could make for a very fun and competitive game, provided the input delay isn't slower than a Snorlax. Punch-Out is a series very near and dear to players' hearts, much like many of Nintendo's franchises, and though it's been out of commission for a long time, also, like many of Nintendo's franchises, bringing Little Mac out of retirement and pitting him against some of the baddest brutes this company has concocted, only in America, only in America. StarFox Nintendo levels. Yet another property that needs the limelight. Fox McCloud's series of adventures, while pretty good on the whole, and no stranger to producing quality titles, has for the most part been unable to surpass its magnum opus on the N64, barring the 3DS version. Well, while making another Star Fox game doesn't guarantee that the series can finally step beyond its 64-bit shadow, if the Big M were to go all in on having Fox and the crew fly through the Nintendoverse while huge battles of epic proportions take place throughout each stage, I have a strong feeling that the Star Fox team will be in Miyamoto's good books once again, because God knows they need to be relevant outside of SmashBros. Before we get ahead of ourselves, just like the previous 3 ideas I pitched, I feel that this game should first and foremost be a new yet traditional Star Fox game, where the levels that are based on different Nintendo universes take the form of bonus content, so as to ensure that the game isn't hard carried by fan service, allowing the new title to stand on its own 2 feet at base, with the additional content pushing it over the edge in terms of quality. As well, players would tackle stages in the traditional tried and true manner, because trust me, the last thing Star Fox needs is more unnecessary gimmicks. I would personally stipulate that boasting a grand spectacle, akin to that of Star Fox Assault, or for a more modern comparison, Mass Effect, where what's going on all around the player and the various background details becomes the main highlight. Not only would this make for great callbacks, but it could also give Nintendo a real leg up in the presentation and graphics department. As while they're by no means bad, just look at the Xenoblade games and Metroid Prime Remastered, if this new assignment for Fox McCloud were to go in very hard on recreating dynamic moments from different Nintendo games that have lots going on, it would make the experience of battling through these stages super intense and a real spectacle, the likes of which have rarely been seen, and would likely put a lot of AAA games to shame with how exuberant everything looks. Examples include the opening to Metroid Prime 3, the awakening of Mechonis in Xenoblade Chronicles, and the airship levels in Mario Bros. 3, or the final siege against Bowser in Galaxy. Already, I can envision this to be a crazy fun time for both veterans and new players, but we can add further attentions to detail by allowing characters from the corresponding universe to talk to StarFox and the crew over the intercom, not only for support and banter, but also for funny callbacks and commentary, such as Pit noticing that his flying pattern and Fox's R-Wing skills are very similar, or how Fire Emblem characters feel about seeing a spaceship amongst the Pegasus Knights and Wyverns. Perhaps Link could get Falco confused with one of the various bird tribes, and don't act surprised if Wolf tries to get in on Samus's bounty, though that canine has no idea what kind of mistake he's making.
What the heck?
The fun doesn't stop there, however, as the R-Wing's appearance could change to reflect the look of a vehicle from that particular universe, as well as utilizing different visuals and sound effects for that authenticity. Not to mention, the levels could contain special objective and fights that by accomplishing lead to alternate routes and scenarios the series is known for, like having to destroy the reset bombs in the Kid Icarus level, saving the little aliens before planet Zebes explodes, correctly navigating through the distortion world so as to reach Giratina, etc. By completing these levels, the player can unlock parts for the R-Wing for either visual flair and or legit upgrades, as well as perhaps extra difficulty modes or something that changes the main campaign, like being able to call in allies from other Nintendo games to assist Fox in some form or fashion. This will likely keep players invested for a very long time, complemented by an achievement system that has players complete tasks that function as references to what would take place during specific scenarios within their respective games, including but not limited to having to collect all the food during a Kirby stage, or shooting a bomb into Kraid's mouth while flying through Brinstar. Honestly, I'm getting giddy at just the prospect of all this. And if they allow for online multiplayer, both competitive and co-op, good lord, Star Fox 64 would seem like nothing in comparison. And I believe this would be the ultimate way to put the franchise back in the spotlight. A great new game at its core that does a wonderful job at celebrating Nintendo's best moments, all brought to life in a spectacle that will make Sony and Microsoft foam at the mouth. I don't know about the rest of you, but when the Switch 2 does eventually come into being, I can't think of a better way to hit the ground running. Nintendo All-Stars music game. This venture is not exactly new, since Nintendo has dabbled into the rhythm game market many a time, and for the most part, these projects have been successful to varying degrees. Donkey Konga is fondly remembered, I love me some Elite Beat Agents, and Rhythm Heaven slaps. With their past credentials in mind, I think it's time for Nintendo to brave the music market once again, but this time bring everyone along for the ride, as a way to revel in the company's contribution to video game discography, and allow players to jam out to their best work across all manner of systems and properties. After all, I'm adamant that Nintendo is definitely in the top 5 standing as far as OSTs are concerned, and SmashBros is proof that there's enough sick beats to keep toes tapping till Judgment Day. Now, I've observed that Nintendo's usual stick when it comes to rhythm games is to incorporate some sort of gimmick and or quirk to make the product stand out, like playing with the bongos or having dramatic stories coincide with the beats while the elite agents bust a groove. While I've always admired their approach to the genre, for a music game of this caliber, I personally feel it would be wise to reel it back and perhaps take inspiration from more modern rhythm games you see at arcades like Groove Coaster and Mai Mai, both of which have unique controls to be sure, but are rather simple in their execution, and are in my opinion generally easier to understand than the Nintendo equivalent, ironically, while simultaneously hosting a very vast track selection with top-notch presentation and fun little avatars that accompany the player during songs, in addition to unlocking garments for obtaining high scores. Heck, the latter music game features the likes of Sonic and Bayonetta, so there's no denying the system works. Given the potential scope of this endeavour, I ascertained that significant emphasis should be placed on the song list and presentation, as the prospect of playing along to your favourite tunes with spellbinding visual flair would be such a treat to both the eyes and ears. This in turn, or at the very least should, that the gameplay will be simpler than their previous music-based endeavours, so as to avoid becoming overly cluttered. But honestly, I'm fine with that, since I believe that rhythm games truly excel when they are easy to play from the get-go. This idea pertains much merit. But if Nintendo were to gorge us on eye candy, then perhaps some of the more iconic or contextually appropriate tracks could get their own movie-style sequences to enhance the dopamine. For the likes of You Will Know Our Names could cut between various Xenoblade battles during the more intense moments of the track, and Edge of Dawn could be a montage of scenes from Fire Emblem Three Houses. Another lovely detail would be to perhaps include custom-made performances for certain tunes, in this case main themes with accompanying vocals, or perhaps include records that derive from other forms of media for additional history. Just imagine the likes of Malon, Azura, Pyra, Pauline and the Squid Sisters getting up on stage and dancing to the likes of Jump Up Superstar and Tomorrow Is Mine. How about having Medley, Roxy, Elise and Sakura, Donkey Kong and KK Slider all jamming along to Ballad of the Goddess or Lower Norfair? Why not have players vibe to Peaches from the Mario Bros. Movie, do the Mario from the TV show, or F-Zero GP Legends theme, because who doesn't love the meaning of truth? It goes without saying that the music selection should be immense and comprised of both original tracks and remixes, plus supplementary records and albums could be added alongside new game releases as either a free update or DLC and amiibo functions. Once again taking inspiration from the arcade games of a similar nature, perhaps the player can use an avatar or maybe just their Mii, who can earn currency through getting high scores and purchase various Nintendo-themed outfits and garments similar to Miitopia. In fact, if you really want to put smiles on people's faces, then perhaps games or franchises that are closely associated with Nintendo's history could be added to the track list, such as Tales of Symphonia, No More Heroes, and Octopath Traveler to name a few. My final suggestion, though certainly a reach at this point, is to feature some sort of music studio mode where players can experiment with existing songs or create their own tracks. Hey, Mario Maker allowed designers to go nuts, so why not throw composers a bone too? Nintendo is no stranger to the rhythm genre, but I would love for them to go all in and allow players to re-experience the best moments of our favourite games in new and more dazzling ways. Plus the content pool can flow for literal years, and it doubles as free advertising for God knows how many titles, so the investments will certainly pay dividends. Nintendo Olympic/Winter Olympic Games. Yes. I'm well aware that Nintendo has technically already tackled this scenario with the Mario and Sonic Olympic Games series, and I won't deny that this idea is just that with a few changes, primarily to the gameplay for hopefully the better, and having the roster of representatives that is on steroids. From its inception, the Olympic Games has always been about coming together and celebrating each nation and all the sporting events that take place. So why not have Nintendo bring forth its entire entourage to partake in the festivities and make for such a wholesome and fun experience that, while not particularly deep or complex, harkens back to that inner child in all of us and allows every pixel of Nintendo's patents to show both the old and new generation why this company has a certain magic to them. Due to this venture acting as an expansion of the Mario and Sonic Sports series, I propose taking the base elements of those games, specifically the first three, and making one giant collection of sport-related minigames, both regular and Winter Olympic themed, would be most preferable. For releasing different versions every 2 years in this current market is something I'd rather not endorse. Plus, if extra content becomes a necessity, then DLC is honestly preferable. Gameplay is, as always, the most important aspect of this undertaking, and since we're not in the Wii era, while I'm fine with Joy-Con motion controls, perhaps Nintendo could simplify how each sport plays out, or ditch the waggle completely to streamline the experience while sticking to the pick-up-and-play nature the company is known for, similar to the Mario Sports titles on the GameCube, or perhaps the Wii Sports series if one must shake their joystick. It goes without saying that each sport will pertain different mechanics, but as long as the controls remain solid and consistent, then even when restricted to just standard events, I believe this will make for a great party game, but the dream events could be where the real fun lies. For those who are unaware, the Mario and Sonic series had the brilliant idea of using locations and levels from various titles in an assortment of sporting events such as ski jumping Mario Galaxy style or snowboarding down Radical Highway. Many would agree that these were the best activities across all the games. Now apply that stipulation to a catalogue of everything Nintendo related. Just picture it, ladies and gentlemen. Bobsledding F-Zero style through the Lightning Loop Cross. Dream fencing within Hyrule Castle where characters like Lyn and Dunban can use their special attacks. Skiing down Valak Mountain. Figure skating across the Phendrana Drifts. Playing basketball in a Pokemon gym. Doing an 800-meter race with Doc Lewis. Paragliding through the skies of Hyrule, jumping hurdles through the Mushroom Kingdom, an equestrian race across the Titans of the Cloud Sea, vaulting across parts that protrude from the Divine Beasts, doing a long jump event through the planets of Pikmin, trampolining up and down the Tower of Guidance, rafting through the Hoenn region, clay pigeon shooting the Underworld Army, skydiving into Corneria. Honestly, I could go on forever, the possibilities are literally endless. With a vast selection of regular and dream sports, there's plenty to play and the variety speaks for itself, with a roster that can be just as humongous, though unlike the source in which this concept is derived from, I'm personally against the notion of having a single character be able to partake in every event. Otherwise, I fear it would either become way too busy and complicated, or you run the risk of serious favoritism or contempt for specific properties, which Smash Bros already gets flack for. Therefore, I propose an alternative solution where characters from each universe are tied to a select number of sports so as to not make things too crowded, such as bulky people can do weightlifting and hammer throw, while nimbler occupants partake in running and jumping events, though I'm still down with having different stats for the respective participants. All of these elements I discern to make for an excellent multiplayer experience. However, for those who fly solo, perhaps a campaign mode where you play as a select universe as you tackle an assortment of events and face off against competing cosmoses with special rival appearances to add to the esteem, incentivizing players to become familiar with each sport and by extension all of Nintendo's IPs. An alternative approach that I propose is for users to have a player character or avatar, if you will, who can explore one or multiple hub worlds and interact with various entities. And by partaking in events and clearing missions given to you by said characters, they can unlock outfits, cosmetics and all sorts of trinkets to either decorate themselves or their personal living space with a la Animal Crossing, which would very much make for the ultimate escapist fantasy. Online play should be heavily encouraged with a decent netcode this time to really bring people together in a more communal sense, by showing off their avatars or competing in events either alone or as a team. Nintendo could furthermore go the extra step by having new characters appear alongside the release of new games as part of a free update or DLC, along with donning their existing roster with special outfits to celebrate the Olympic Games as well as various national holidays depending on the time of year. Because who wouldn't want to see Samus in a Chinese New Year dress, or having Kirby go around with an egg basket and bunny ears? God, imagine how much fun could be had during Halloween and Christmas, or going the full 9 yards for St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, I know it's never gonna happen, but the premise is too much fun to ignore outright. I'll admit some of my suggestions seem a little outlandish, and in general, this game doesn't boast any feature that makes it mechanically rich, for this escapade harkens back to the GameCube era of Mario spin-offs, but with lots of variety and the joy of having these properties and universes bounce off each other and work together, keeping within the spirit of the Olympic Games, and the promotional material is where they can really go to town on tugging at our heartstrings and nostalgia. If the Smash Bros trailers are any evidence, then crossovers plus high production values go a long way, even when excluding tits and ass. Thus, having different entities interacting with one another during beautifully rendered cutscenes and in-game events would be perfect. There's so much potential for such genuine, warm-hearted fun and silly slapstick that's the type of innocence a lot of us could use these days, for we could bear witness to Princess Peach, Zelda, Fjorm, Melia and Dawn in special ice dresses all figure skating together. How cool would it be to observe Morag, Link, Pit, Lucina, Crystal and Klaus facing off in fencing? I would love to see a bunch of water Pokemon, the Zoras, Bloopers and water-based Blades all go swimming. Just imagine Ignatz, the Inklings, Bowser Jr. and Smeargle all painting on a giant canvas, cheering and screaming while brutes like Ravenbeak, Malos, Ashnod, Haxorus, Wart and Clubber smash their teeth in playing ice hockey, gawking at Kirby, Mercedes, Cooking Mama and Alcremie all baking cakes together while Palutena is bound and gagged, or fawning over the Eeveelutions, Nia, Cat Toad, Mordecai and Wolflink all napping together. God, this stuff would make me and I'm sure many others squeal like school children. Plus the devs could use this opportunity to poke fun at each other during certain events, such as having Pit lose his ability to fly after 5 minutes and Palutena looking embarrassed, or the Fire Emblem characters struggling with weightlifting while Donkey Kong does it effortlessly. Perhaps Samus could use her space jump to win the high jump and everyone cries foul, or Olimar uses his entire band of Pikmin during the tug of war, yet they lose to slacking. Heck, you could make these into fun little shorts and I'd watch them on repeat for days on end. Yes, at the end of the day, this idea is wishful thinking at its finest, for Mario and Sonic already beat me to the punch, and while no doubt this title would make for a lot of fun, the primary purpose of this prospect is that of eye candy, Plus, nothing's going to top what Smash Bros has achieved when it comes to a Nintendo collab. But a game of this caliber would emanate so much charm and magic by simply letting Nintendo's creations be themselves alongside an entire galaxy of participants, bringing out the best in each series, just like how the Olympic Games brings out the best in us as a species, which is why it takes the #1 spot. For the Nintendo crossover, I'd love to see the most. Thank you all for watching today. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed the video. Please be sure to give it a like and thumbs up, and don't forget to follow me on Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and what are some crossovers that you personally would love to see within Nintendo's own franchises and IPs. I'd love to get a discussion going. And of course, I'd like to say an enormous thank you to all my patrons who've been supporting me all this time, making these videos possible and just constantly helping out with everything, no matter what it is. And just, I really cannot thank you all enough. Thankfully, this video wasn't as long as the Treehouse one. God, that was such a big wait, but thank you all for all the feedback, love, support throughout this entire journey, for constantly making it so that I can make these videos and pushing myself to do better and stuff each time. I really cannot thank you all enough for just how you've made me such a better person and just all the stuff that we get up to and all that jazz. And for you patrons specifically, there'll be a couple of nice treats for you 24 hours after this video goes live. I'm sure you'll get a link in the Discord or on Twitter to all the extra bonus content. And I would like to say a very special thank you to Wolffox, Lucina21, K-Dog, Jeremy Redinger, Glentrog750, Chaos Saberline, VC Videos 100, Starship 9, Midnight Castle, Maggie Fall, Fahrenheit392, Daniel Hodgson, and finally, Zenny Dragon. Thank you all so much. Mwah! From the bottom of my heart, thank you all. I love you, love you, love you. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.